So let's move along now and sort of talk about this sort of banning of negative gearing would increase supply and increase rent. So around this time, there was lots of debates going on, and this still happens to this day. So what I'm showing you here is an article from the ABC News, and I still see this in these left-leaning publications where I'm getting a lot of this sort of 90% of property investors only buy established property. And then I see people tweeting that on social media or doing wherever, talking about to that particular story. Now, we back in 2016 or 2019, when we were lobbying against these changes back then, we've already debunked that myth back then. So let me just explain to you. So the Grattan Institute released a paper and research and with their modelling. And they talked about it'll have a minimal effect, so property prices will fall a little bit, but it won't necessarily have a marginal effect on the level of supply coming into the market. Because their argument was that at the moment, if we make it on new rather than existing, already you can see in here where it says between only 8 and 14% in investors lending is for new property. So all of their modelling was based on the wrong data. So ultimately, any of the projections that they were going to issue was actually false. And that's when we were featured on the AFR front page of the Australian Financial Review.
That's when you choked on your Wheaties.
Talking about that particular point. Now, a lot has definitely happened since then. So back then, we spoke to AFG, we spoke to BMT, tax depreciation quantity surveyors, and we got a lot of data that sort of said to it was around 30 to 40% were new, and then around sort of 60 to 70% were existing. Now, that's a lot different than 10% and 90%. And we know even through the current situation right now, and we're going to unpack this in the market dynamics around just how challenging it is to get new property to market at the moment. Here's the data from today. So let's have a quick look at this particular data. This is again from the ABS. And so we can see here, this is the number of overall building approvals, number of new loans, my apologies, to investors. So you can see this is for construction of new dwellings. This is for the purchase of a newly erected dwelling. And this is for the purchase of land. Well, if you're going to buy vacant land, you've got to build something new on it. So all of those summed up account for 26% of property being purchased for new versus 73% existing. So even though in these challenging times where I don't know whether my builder's going to go broke, obviously there's a lot of changes that are going on in terms of reforms and higher taxes, which are limiting buildings of medium and high density as well as new land subdivisions. So it really is quite important to remember that this is probably the worst that it gets when it comes to that. So for the Grattan Institute to claim that the negative gearing wasn't working, well, it's actually debunked by that, because negative gearing does incentivize people to buy new. And that's what we're seeing in the data. Could more people buy new? Potentially, but around 30%. So obviously 3 out of every 10. And remembering, the new stock is not a big portion of the overall existing stock. So it really goes to say, well, 30% is pretty good. So is negative gearing, so my summary on this is negative gearing working to incentivize people to buy new? Well, if 3 out of every 10 that are being bought brand new, it's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, 100%. So that's compelling when you've got data that's being prepared at 8 to 14%, and then you see it's at 26.
Yeah, so it's double what they had in their modelling projections. So the question then in terms of, fact check number 5 is, who benefits the most?